Tonight, I'm sharing 5 terrifying stories of what really happens in abandoned Texas towns at night. The first story involves a forgotten mining town, strange lights that dance through the ruins, and a night one witness swears changed him forever. What would you do if a town no one lived in anymore still seemed alive after dark? This account comes from Daniel, a photographer who had been chasing abandoned places for years. In 2019, he set his sights on Thurber, Texas, once a booming coal mining town, now little more than a scattering of ruins and a single old smokestack that still rises above the mesquite. Daniel wasn't scared of ghost towns. He liked them. Empty streets meant still photos. Collapsed porches and leaning signs gave him the textures he wanted. He always said the silence was part of the art. He arrived just before sunset. The town looked like a collection of broken teeth, crumbling foundations, stone walls without roofs, windows like eye sockets, staring into nothing. The smokestack loomed in the distance, a brick finger stabbing the sky. He parked by what used to be the general store and shouldered his camera bag. The air smelled of dry weeds and dust. Grasshoppers clicked in the heat. He shot wide frames of sagging houses, rusted tin siding curling back like paper. As the sun dropped, he set up his tripod to capture the smokestack against a red sky. That's when he noticed the first light. At first, he thought it was a car on the highway. A white glow, low and steady, out past the line of collapsed houses. But there was no sound of tires, no road where the glow should have been. It hovered. Then it moved. Not fast, just deliberate, sliding between ruins, weaving through broken door frames, as if it remembered where walls used to stand. Daniel frowned, raised his camera, and snapped. The lens caught a streak. He adjusted, snapped again. This time, the light blinked out, then reappeared 5 feet to the left. He told himself it was someone else with a flashlight, maybe another urban explorer, maybe kids messing around. But then it split. One light became 2, both gliding along parallel paths. A moment later, 2 became 3. They didn't swing like handheld beams. They floated, bobbing gently as shoulder height, too smooth to be carried. The crickets stopped. Daniel lowered his camera. His own breath sounded too loud in the silence. He wanted to call out, to announce himself, but something in his gut warned him not to. The lights didn't behave like they wanted to be found. Instead, he crouched behind a low wall, peering through a jagged window frame. The 3 lights drifted closer. Their glow wasn't harsh. It was soft, almost lantern-like, but without a flame. As they neared, Daniel saw they weren't shining on the ground. They didn't cast shadows. They just existed. He lifted his camera again, zooming in. Through the lens, the lights flickered, each one pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. He snapped. The shutter clicked. The nearest light paused. Daniel swore it turned toward him. It had no face, no shape, but the way it shifted, hovering, angling slightly, it felt aware. The other 2 followed, aligning, all 3 tilting in his direction. Then the whispering started. Not words, not at first. Just the sound of low voices carried from far off. He thought it might be wind moving through stone, but the air was dead still. The whispers grew louder, layered, male, female, young, old, dozens of voices murmuring at once, rising and falling in strange rhythm. Daniel clutched his camera tighter. The lights pulsed in time with the whispers. He backed away, careful not to trip on rubble. The whispers followed, wrapping around him like cloth, tugging at his ears. He caught fragments, like, "Stay." Don't go. See us. Remember. But they overlapped until meaning blurred. The nearest light glided forward, crossing the low wall like it wasn't there. Daniel stumbled, scrambled backward. The light hovered inches from his chest. Through its glow, he swore he saw a shape, fingers maybe, pressed against glass, reaching outward. He ran. The lights followed. Through the broken streets, past collapsed porches, across weeds taller than his knees, they stayed at his back. He didn't hear footsteps, only whispers, only that low collective breath chasing him through the ruins. He burst into the open lot where his car was parked. His headlights glared against the dark, ordinary and solid. Relief flooded him, but when he reached for the handle, his keys weren't in his pocket. He froze. He had them, he was sure. The whispers swelled, louder now, circling. The three lights fanned out, surrounding him, pulsing brighter. Their glow painted the car in white. Daniel dropped to his knees, tearing through his camera bag, shaking with panic. Tripod, spare lens, water bottle, no keys. And then, there, lying on the ground by the driver's side door just outside the reach of the lights, his keys. He lunged, grabbed them, yanked the door open, and dove inside. He slammed the lock, jammed the key into the ignition, and twisted. The engine coughed once, twice, dead. The lights hovered closer, pressing against the windshield, glowing so bright he had to shield his eyes. The whispers filled the cab, surrounding him. He screamed, fists against the steering wheel, and just like that, they vanished. The car roared to life. Headlights cut through the empty lot. Cricket started again. The silence broke. Daniel floored it, tearing down the highway without looking back. Later, when he checked his camera, every photo after sunset was blurred beyond recognition. The smokestack shots were fine, the ruins were sharp, but the lights? Just white smears, as if the lens had been drowned in fog. He deleted them. He didn't want the proof. But sometimes, when he closes his eyes, he swears he still sees them pulsing. 3 faint orbs waiting in the ruins of Thurber. Daniel doesn't do night shoots anymore. He sticks to daylight, no matter how less dramatic the photos turn out. He says the art isn't worth whatever those lights were. And when other explorers ask him about Thurber, he only says this: don't go after dark. That town may be empty, but it doesn't want to be forgotten.
Before you go, what do you think those lights were? Spirits of miners? Something else entirely? Tell me in the comments. The second story involves a couple passing through the desert, a boarded-up house in Marfa Flats, and a midnight knock that has never been explained. What would you do if someone or something knocked on your door when no one should be there? This account comes from Claire and Marcus, a couple who'd been driving cross-country in the summer of 2015. They had planned their route carefully, but West Texas has a way of erasing your plans. Empty miles stretch on forever, radio stations fade, and sometimes the road itself seems to vanish into the desert. It was late evening when they realized they had missed their turn and were nowhere near the motel they had booked. Their phones had no signal, gas was running low. Just outside of Marfa Flats, they saw what looked like an old service station and a row of weathered houses, the kind where boards hung crooked over broken windows and weeds grew tall through cracks in the asphalt. It looked abandoned, but there was one house at the far end with its doors shut, roof sagging, porch light long dead. Marcus pulled in. He didn't want to, but the gas gauge told him they weren't making it to Alpine without stopping. Claire argued it wasn't safe. Ghost towns meant squatters, and squatters meant trouble. But the desert night was falling quick, and there was no other choice. They parked near the house. The silence was overwhelming. No crickets, no wind, just the faint click of the truck's cooling engine. Marcus got out, checked the pump at the service station, dry. He cursed under his breath. Claire, sitting in the truck, watched him walk the empty row of houses, peeking into dark windows. Each house was hollow, filled with nothing but dust. The last one, the one with the shut door, was different. Its front step was swept clean of sand. Marcus called Claire over. Against her better judgment, she followed. Together they stepped onto the porch. The boards groaned. The door was warped, paint peeling, but the brass knob was polished like someone had used it recently. Marcus knocked. Once. Twice. The sound echoed hollow through the empty town. No answer. They turned to leave when Claire heard it, movement inside, a faint shuffle, like bare feet dragging across wooden floorboards. Marcus froze, hands still on the knob. He called out, "Hello? We're just passing through. Truck's low on gas. Do you know if there's another station nearby?" Silence. Then 3 knocks. From the inside. Not against the door, against the wall, just to the right. Slow, deliberate. Claire backed away. Marcus muttered, "Someone's in there." But the more they listened, the more wrong it felt. The knocks didn't sound like warning. They sounded like invitation. They left. Quickly. Back in the truck, engine coughing to life, headlights washing across the sagging houses. They drove out onto the main road, breath held until the town was behind them. Relief lasted only a few miles, because at midnight, as they pulled onto an empty stretch of highway with nothing but desert on both sides, it happened again. 3 knocks. This time on the truck's rear window. Claire screamed. Marcus swerved, nearly driving off the asphalt. He slammed the brakes, pulled over, heart pounding. They sat frozen, staring into the mirrors. Nothing. The road was empty, the desert flat and still under moonlight. No cars, no people. Marcus got out, circling the truck with a flashlight. No footprints in the sand, no marks on the glass. But the sound had been real, clear, right behind their heads. Back inside, Marcus gripped the wheel with white knuckles. He whispered, "We keep driving." Claire nodded, too shaken to speak. The knocks didn't come again, but for the rest of the night, Claire swore she felt eyes in the back of the truck, just behind the seat, watching. And when they reached Alpine at dawn, they found something neither of them could explain. 3 faint, greasy handprints on the inside of the rear window. Claire and Marcus never drove through Marfa Flats again. They finished their road trip, but for months afterwards, Claire said she woke at night to phantom knocks on her bedroom wall. Always 3. Always slow. Marcus doesn't like to talk about it, but when he does, he says this: "We thought we left that house behind, but maybe some doors don't stay closed once you knock on them." What do you think followed them? A spirit from the boarded house? Or something older that waits for anyone who dares to knock? Tell me in the comments.
The third story takes us to Toya, where a traveler swore he heard a church bell ringing in a town with no congregation, no service, and no living soul for miles. What would you do if the bell tolled for you? This account comes from Miguel, a long-haul trucker who had been driving west through Reeves County in 2012. He wasn't the type to believe in ghost stories. His life was measured in mile markers, coffee refills, and dispatch calls. But one night,
Passing through the ruins of Toya, he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about the empty places of Texas. Toya had once been a thriving railroad town, but now it was little more than collapsed houses, boarded storefronts, and a single church standing crooked at the edge of the highway. Miguel had seen it before, its steeple bent, its white paint long peeled, windows covered in plywood. Every time he passed, he thought it looked like a husk, hollow and tired. This night, though, as he crested the rise and Toya came into view, something was different. He heard it before he even saw the church, the sound of a bell. It was faint at first, carried on the desert wind. A single toll, then another, deep, resonant, echoing across the flat land. Miguel slowed the rig. His headlights swept over the ruined town. Empty porches, dead gas pumps, rusting cars swallowed by weeds. And at the end of the street, the church. The sound was unmistakable. The bell was ringing. Miguel frowned. He knew that steeple had been empty for decades. The bell had been removed years ago. He'd even read about it in a local history book at a diner. But the sound was clear, deep as iron striking iron. He told himself it was something else, a metal sheet flapping in the wind, a water tank shifting. But then it tolled again, steady and deliberate. He pulled the truck onto the shoulder, engine idling. The night was otherwise silent, the kind of silence that makes the desert feel endless. Another toll. He stared at the church, its silhouette stark against the moonlight. The steeple leaned slightly, but at the top, where the bell chamber should have been hollow, something glowed faintly, a pale, swinging light. The toll came again. Miguel cut the engine. The silence deepened. The glow swayed in rhythm with the sound, though he knew there was nothing there to swing. Against his better judgment, he climbed down from the cab. The gravel crunched under his boots. Each step toward the church felt heavier than the last. As he neared the edge of town, he noticed something else. The buildings weren't as still as they had seemed. Curtains shifted in windows, doors hung open wider than before, and in the dust of the street, faint impressions stretched ahead, as though many feet had walked that way not long ago. The bell tolled again. Miguel stopped in the middle of the road, staring. The faint glow in the steeple pulsed, and for a split second he thought he saw shapes moving through the church's broken windows. Silhouettes, dozens of them. He should have turned back, but curiosity tugged him closer. At the foot of the church steps, he froze. The wood looked newly swept. No dust, no weeds growing through the cracks. The door, though warped and cracked the last time he passed, now stood straight, paint fresh white in the moonlight. The bell rang again, louder now, right above him. He craned his neck upward, but the steeple was empty. Then came the voices. Low at first, a collective murmur rising from inside. Words he couldn't make out, spoken in unison, a congregation chanting, though the church had been abandoned for decades. Miguel felt his skin crawl. The air smelled of old wood polish and candle wax, scents that didn't belong in the dry ruin. His boots creaked on the first step. He told himself he'd just peek inside, just to see. He gripped the handle. The door swung open with ease. Inside, the church was lit by dozens of candles. Pews that had been rotted and collapsed were now upright, polished, filled with shadows seated shoulder to shoulder. Faces blurred, heads bowed, a preacher's silhouette stood at the pulpit, hands raised. Miguel's breath caught in his throat. He knew what he was looking at couldn't be real. But the bell tolled again, rattling the walls. Every shadowed head turned toward him in perfect unison. Their faces were indistinct, smudged like charcoal sketches, but their eyes, hollow and glowing, locked on his. The preacher raised a hand. Silence fell.
Then the entire congregation whispered in one voice, "Sit." McGill stumbled back, nearly falling off the step. The candles flickered violently. The bell rang again, shaking the air. He turned and ran, boots pounding the dust. Behind him, the murmurs swelled. A hymn, sung low and ragged, carried through the night. He didn't dare look back. He dove into his cab, slammed the lock, and fired the engine. The truck roared, headlights slicing the street. As he pulled away, the bell tolled one last time. In his mirror, the church was dark again, steeple crooked, windows boarded, door sagging. The glow was gone. He drove until dawn before stopping. Miguel refuses to drive through Toya at night. If his route forces him past, he waits until sunrise. He says he can still hear that bell when he closes his eyes. And every time he passes the ruins, he swears the steeple leans a little less, like the church is repairing itself, waiting for the next congregation. He never told his company, never told his family. But when other drivers mention the abandoned towns of West Texas, he just shakes his head and says, "If you hear the bell, don't look for the church. Keep driving." Tell me in the comments, what do you think Miguel saw that night? Was it a ghost service still gathering after all these years? Or something older hiding in plain sight?
The fourth story takes us to Terlingüia, a desert mining town left to ruin, where a traveler swore he saw shadows moving down Main Street long after the last soul was gone. What would you do if the streetlights flickered on in a town that had no power? This account comes from Emily, a road tripper who had been camping her way across West Texas in the spring of 2021. She was drawn to places most people avoided: ghost towns, forgotten outposts, places swallowed by sand and silence. One night, she decided to stop in Terlingüia. She had heard of its ruins, the remnants of a mining camp, adobe houses crumbling, and a dusty main street lined with hollow storefronts. Tourists came in the daytime, sure, but after sunset, it emptied fast. Locals said the town wasn't for visitors at night. Emily didn't listen. She parked her van at the edge of Main Street, just as the last orange faded from the desert sky. The silence was absolute, except for the soft hiss of wind carrying sand across the road. She grabbed her camera, intending to snap a few long exposures of the adobe ruins under starlight. But the second she stepped onto Main Street, she felt it. The pressure of being watched, not by one person, but by many. The storefront them were nothing more than frames, their doors long gone, windows smashed. Yet every dark opening looked occupied, shadows stretching deeper than they should. She shook it off, set her tripod, snapped the first shot. Click. When she reviewed the preview screen, her stomach dropped. The photo showed faint human-like shapes standing in the doorways, figures she hadn't seen with her eyes. She blinked, looked again. The doorways were empty. But when she snapped another photo, there they were. Dozens, blurred, elongated, crowding the thresholds. Emily tried to convince herself it was dust, camera error, lens flare. But then she realized something chilling. The figures were closer in the second shot than the first. A scrape echoed behind her. She spun. Nothing. Just her van, parked at the end of the street. The hairs on her arms prickled. That's when the lights came on. Street lamps that hadn't worked in decades flickered to life, buzzing faintly, casting cones of pale yellow down the empty road. Emily froze, her mouth dry. The town had no power. There were no lines to feed those lamps, yet there they were, humming like it was 1955 again. And in their glow, the shadows moved. They weren't attached to anything. They slid across walls, across the ground, darting from one storefront to another.
Some stretched impossibly tall, bending, craning. Others hunched low, scuttling quick. Emily stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her tripod. The camera fired another shot on its timer, the shutter echoing like a gunshot in the silence. The preview lit her face, the entire street crowded with shadows, dozens of them, frozen in mid-step, all facing her. She backed towards her van, hands trembling. That's when one of the lamps above her popped, glass shattering, sparks spraying. The light went out. The darkness beneath it deepened unnaturally, swallowing the space. And from that black pool, something stepped out. Not a full figure, just a darker shape, human-like, but without detail. Its edges shimmered like heat off asphalt. It moved slow, deliberate, toward her. Emily bolted. She sprinted to the van, fumbling with the keys. Behind her, more lamps popped, one after another, plunging the street into patches of unnatural dark. From each one, more shadows spilled, filling the road. She yanked the van door open, dove inside, slammed the lock. Her headlights blazed on as she twisted the ignition. For a second, the beams revealed Main Street, crowded shoulder to shoulder with shadowy forms, not blurred this time, not faint, solid, watching. The engine roared. Emily floored it, gravel spitting as she tore away from the ghost town. In her mirror, the street lamps winked out, one by one, until the ruins were swallowed in darkness again. Emily never camped alone again. She told me that sometimes, when she parks under a streetlight, she sees shadows moving just beyond the glow, shapes that vanish when she looks straight at them. She swears she left Terlingua behind, but part of her believes the shadows followed her out of that town, clinging to her in photographs, waiting for another dark street. When other travelers ask about Terlingua, she only says this: "Go in the daytime if you want, but if the lamps come on at night, run." Tell me in the comments, do you think those shadows were people who lived in Terlingua long ago, or something darker that wears their shapes?
The final story takes us to Barstow Bend, where a traveler checked into the last standing motel and discovered he wasn't the only guest. What would you do if the room you locked wasn't empty after all? This account comes from a man named Jordan, who was driving from Dallas to El Paso in 2018. He left later than planned and found himself exhausted on the highway, eyes burning, hands cramping on the wheel. By midnight, he was desperate for a place to stop. That's when he saw it, a flickering neon sign just off the frontage road, Motel in faded red letters, half the bulbs burned out. A row of single-story rooms stretched along a cracked parking lot, their doors painted pale blue. The town around it, Barstow Bend, looked empty. A few sagging houses, a boarded gas station, weeds growing tall through the sidewalk. But the motel sign glowed stubbornly, promising rest. Jordan pulled in. At the office, the blinds were drawn, but a faint light glowed inside. He tapped on the counter bell. After a long pause, a man shuffled out from the back. Thin, gray hair combed neatly, skin pale as wax. He didn't speak much, just slid over a key marked Room 7. His eyes never quite met Jordan's. He asked about the rate. The man just smiled, lips pressed thin, and said, "Pay in the morning." Uneasy, but too tired to argue, he carried his bag down the row. The air was still, warm, thick with the smell of dust. Every door he passed had peeling paint, their numbers crooked. Room 7's knob was cold, colder than the night air. Inside, the room was normal. Too normal. Floral bedspread, old TV, a painting of a desert landscape on the wall. It smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals, though the carpet was worn and frayed.
Jordan locked the door, set his bag down, and collapsed on the bed. Sleep came quick. He woke to knocking. 3 slow knocks at the door. He sat up, disoriented. The clock on the nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m. He listened. Silence. Then 3 knocks again. "Front desk?" he called. Voice hoarse. No reply. He swung his legs off the bed, padded barefoot to the door, peered through the peephole. Nothing. Just the dim parking lot, the neon sign buzzing faintly through the curtains. He shook his head, muttered about pranksters, and climbed back into bed. Sleep took him again. Knock, knock, knock. This time not at the door, from inside the room. He froze. The sound came from the bathroom door, 3 slow raps against the wood. His throat went dry. He hadn't gone in there. He hadn't even turned on the light. The bathroom door was shut tight. He whispered, "Hello?" No answer. The room felt smaller, the air heavy. He forced himself up, hand trembling as he reached for the bathroom knob. He turned it slowly. The door creaked open. The bathroom was empty. Sink cracked, mirror streaked, shower curtain drawn. He let out a shaky laugh. Just pipes settling, just nerves. He closed the door. Knock, knock, knock. This time from the closet. He spun, heart hammering. The closet door was shut, painted the same pale blue as the room's doors outside. He hadn't noticed it before. He stared at it, chest tight. Every instinct screamed not to open it, but the knocking came again. Slow, deliberate, patient. He creeped forward, hand reaching for the knob. It was ice cold. He yanked it open. Empty. Just a rod with a few bent wire hangers. Relief swept him until he heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. This time from under the bed. Jordan stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. He dropped to his knees, heart in his ears, and lifted the bedspread. Nothing. Just dust and shadows. He crawled backwards, panting, sat with his back to the wall. That's when he noticed the painting, the desert landscape, the one above the TV. Something was different. In the distance, where before there had been only sand and sky, now there was a figure, small, black, standing, watching. Jordan's stomach turned. He blinked. The figure was closer. He grabbed his bag, keys, shoes, didn't even put them on. He ran for the door, flung it open. The parking lot was deserted, every room dark. But as he glanced back, his blood ran cold. Every door, from 1 to 12, was standing open, all of them. Inside each room, he saw shapes, figures standing still, framed by the doorways, staring at him. The neon sign buzzed above, spelling motel in sputtering red. Jordan sprinted for his car, dove in, floored it onto the highway. He didn't stop until dawn, when he found another town, another motel, one alive with traffic, noise, and people. When he unpacked his bag, he noticed something that still chills him. The key to room 7 was inside. Jordan swore never to stop in Barstow Bend again. He threw the key away, but sometimes he dreams of it, cold brass pressing into his palm. He says the worst part isn't the knocking. It's the feeling that if he had stayed 1 minute longer, he wouldn't have been alone in that room anymore.
Before you go, what do you think was waiting for Jordan in room 7? Was it the motel itself, or something that wanted him to open one door too many? If stories like this keep you up at night, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon. I post new horror every day. Until then, don't answer the knock, don't look in the mirror, and never trust the last motel light still on. Sweet dreams.